Here we go. Remote work. It was all the rage in 2020 when the world was coming to an end. It stayed strong in 2021. 2022, we began to see the fabric of remote work begin to be torn, the tug of war between leaders and companies that wanted people to come back in, people who said, I love remote work, I'm never going back, you can't make me, I'm not going to do it. And now we're seeing the numbers move back towards in the office, or what is now called hybrid, which is some in-office work and some remote work. And as a result of the remote work exploding in 2020, we saw over the next 2 years, and we continue to see it in the headlines almost weekly, remote layoffs. So you want remote work, guess what you get? Remote layoffs. You work remote, guess what? They're not going to fire you remotely. And it's awful. And I have been very vocal about it on this show, on social media, at Ken Coleman. And I'm not going to stop because I think it robs people, it steals dignity when leaders decide to lay somebody off in a cold, non-caring fashion of not looking them in the eye. Now, we'll break this down a little bit, and I want to know what you think in the comments. You got some smart people going, I think laying people off remote is actually better. University of Pennsylvania Wharton School of Management professor Peter Capelli says he thinks it's actually a better move. Why? Clearly, Peter's never been laid off in a remote fashion, or I dare say he'd have a different opinion. He says if you're a remote worker anyway, the idea that we're going to call you into the office just to lay you off is kind of cruel. Is it? Let's just stop for a second. All right. I don't know if any of you have been laid off before. I have. Okay. Happened to me one time. And it sucks. It's awful. There's no way to replace that feeling. It is, even if it's not personal in the way that it's handled, they don't come at you personally, attack you. Even if it's just completely classy and above board, it is just an awful feeling to be let go. It is just at its core, I think, the ultimate rejection. The only thing close to it is being dumped. All right? And I've been dumped before. I've told that story many times. The worst dump, the dumping, if you call it a dumping, you got to get in a different category here if I'm not careful. When I got dumped in college, this was the worst I ever had. All right? I'll give you the 30-second version. This is before cell phones. So we're supposed to meet for a date. I pull up, pick the girl up, and she's crying. She's devastated. I think somebody in her family died, quite frankly. She's walking to the car devastated. And I'm all prepared to go into chief compassion officer. No, nobody died. Just my pride. As she got into the car, I said, what's wrong? We need to talk. And she's sobbing. So you know what's coming next. And she proceeds to dump me while sobbing, as if she's the one that's hurt. Okay? We've all been there. When you get fired, laid off, or dumped, it's the ultimate rejection. It's personal. It just is. No way to get around it. So in this situation, we know to be true. We all can agree on that, I would imagine. I don't agree with the good professor that if they work remote, you should just Zoom call them and go, hey, I'm going to save you this, and this by letting you go via Zoom. Some of you could, and by the way, I think you can make a compelling case that if you do it via Zoom, at least you're looking at them and you are connecting to them one-on-one. But we've seen these leaders that are mass firing thousands of people over Zoom. So there's not a personal connection. You could probably debate me, and I'd be willing to concede that if there was no other way to do it, or you just were really passionate that all of our communication is via Zoom, and you do it one-on-one, and you still extend some dignity to them, I'll give you that one, but I'm begrudging about it. Because I think when you got to deliver bad news like this, no matter if it's their fault or not. In person is the way to do it. But they're spinning it to say, this professor is, why would you call them in just to let them go? That's excruciating. Well, because I believe that we need to show folks compassion and treat people with class. I also understand that as I say this, that does not happen very often. I understand that. But I think that we are in this era of the digital, the technology, the social connection. And so everything has become so desensitized. For instance, just go put out an opinion on TikTok or Instagram or Twitter and wait to see the response. Just try that. Everybody's brave. Everybody's saucy because there's no human-to-human connection. But you put that same person in front of you face to face. Now, there are some absolute lunatics that will say something and pop off, but it's a whole lot less. Here's my point. What I believe is that social media, and let me pick on email while I'm at it. All of the digital or electronic communication has removed our humanness. And so that's why companies think, you know what, you're remote, we communicate. We're just going to turn off your email, turn off your access, and you're going to wake up in the morning, and instead of going to the office and a boss looking at you and telling you the bad news with some compassion, with some dignity, integrity, character, no, you wake up, pull up your phone, and realize you've been fired. And we're going to normalize this? Now, here's why I bring this up. Laying people off over Zoom, via email, not telling them anything, just locking them out, is cowardly, and it is crushing trust in the American workplace. I had an Instagram that we put up a couple days ago. You can go check it out at Ken Coleman, and it was from a previous show where I brought up an article where now the question is, should you give 2 weeks notice? And my opinion is, I said this in the clip. I said, look, you don't have to. There's no rule that says you have to. I would leave well. But if that's 3 days notice, I think you can leave well with 3 days notice. But here was the overwhelming response. Companies don't treat us well when they let us go. Why should I go in with my nicely written resignation letter and give 2, 3, 4 weeks notice? And what I've said was I think you need to leave well. I think it's always better to leave well, no matter how you were treated. But I understand the frustration and the visceral nerve and emotion that people are feeling because they're going, they treat us poorly. Why should I extend courtesy and class to them? Because I don't want you to ever have anything like that follow you. If they treat you poorly when they let you go, or they treated you poorly when you're there, if you don't act with as much class as possible, it gives them an excuse to trash you in the future. I just think you shouldn't burn a bridge and blow up a bridge. I just don't think you should. However, I want you to hear me say this. This is why we've got this huge divide in America and why so many people are leaving to the tune of 4+ million people every month. You don't feel cared for. And the reason you don't feel cared for is you don't see much evidence. Leaders aren't treating you like humans with compassion. No matter how stressful it is, how difficult the conversation is, leaders must treat people with compassion. And they don't. And that's why the divide is growing. And we've got to stop this. It's going to boil over.